Hello everybody and welcome to our council meeting Wednesday the 22nd of September. I'd like to just go through our the live streaming. As the meeting chair, I give my consent for this open council meeting to be streamed live, recorded and published online in accordance with council's live streaming policy and governance rules. The chair and or the CEO have the discretion and authority at any time to direct the termination or interruption of live streaming. Such directions will only be given in exceptional circumstances where deemed relevant. Circumstances may include instances where the content of debate is considered misleading, defamatory or potentially inappropriate to be published. Attendees are advised that they may be subject to legal action if their actions result in inappropriate and or unacceptable behaviour and or comments. Thank you. Virtual meeting statement. The COVID-19 Omnibus Bill 2020 provision allows council meetings attendance by electronic means. The requirements of the meeting being open to the public is satisfied by the meeting being streamed live to council's internet. In the event of technical issues with the live streaming, the meeting will be adjourned. Councils are deemed to be in attendance if they can hear proceedings, they can see other members in attendance and can be seen by other members, and they can be heard to speak. A reminder that please turn off all mobile phones. Statement of acknowledgement. Bass Coast Shire Council acknowledges Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders as the first Australians and recognises that they have a unique relationship with land and water. Council also recognises that we are situated on the lands of the traditional owners, members of the Kulin Nation who have lived here for thousands of years. We offer our respects to their elders, past, present, and through them, all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders. Now I ask Councillor Halstead to read out the councillor statement.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. All members of this council pledge to the Bass Coast Shire community to consider every item listed on this agenda, based on the individual merits of each item, without bias or prejudice, by maintaining an open mind and disregarding councillors' personal interests so as to avoid any conflict with our public duty. Any councillor having a conflict of interest in an item will make a proper prior disclosure to the meeting and will not participate in the debate or vote on the issue. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Halstead. All present and apologies, I have none. Declaration of interests, I have none. Now, I'd just like to throw to Councillor Whelan, who has a sad announcement to make.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. It's with great sadness that I report to Council that David and Denise Mitchell, long-time residents of Phillip Island, were tragically killed in a car crash at Devon Meadows last Friday. They're active and much-loved members of the Phillip Island Golf Club, contributing to the golf and social life of the club over many decades. David was a club member, a volunteer, very fine golfer, and a role model for young players. As well as a golfer, Denise worked in leadership roles for women's golf at Phillip Island and for the South Gippsland Women's District Golf Association. Her advice to an incoming new women's captain when asked for advice was to say, just have empathy. They're a loving couple, married for 62 years, who are closely involved in the lives of their children and grandchildren. They were loved and respected by all who knew them and will be sadly missed.
Well said. Thank you, Councillor Whelan. Okay, reports requiring council decision. C1 financial statement and performance statement for 2020-21 is presented by Mr Mack.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The purpose of this report is to obtain in-principle approval from Council for the financial and performance statements that are being submitted to the Auditor and seek a resolution of Council authorising two councillors, the Mayor and Deputy Mayor, to certify the financial statements. The Audit Committee reviewed the financial statements and performance statement on 7 September 2021. They have recommended that these be adopted by Council, subject to the receipt from the auditors of the draft closing report to VAGO, and there being no material substantive changes requested by the Auditor. The Auditor has subsequently provided Council officers and the Audit Committee with the draft closing report. and the finalised financial statements and the performance statement have been submitted to VAGO for clearance, which we understand is imminent. No substantive changes that impact the result have been made to the statements since the Audit Committee review. Council is reporting a sound financial result that is underpinned by an underlying surplus of 0.4 million, a 20.7 million operating surplus due to 16.6 million in unbudgeted developer contributions, and a 0.7 million reduction in borrowings. This, coupled with ongoing investment in new assets, as well as asset renewals, has contributed to Council's balance sheet strength. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mack. Can I have somebody move and second that the recommendation be adopted? Councillor Whelan, and seconded. Councillor Holstead. Councillor Whelan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There's not much to, as usual, comprehensive report from Mr. Mack. I was at the Audit and Risk Committee on the 7th of September when they considered in some detail the reports that have been submitted to them. And I'm pleased to say that they have recommended that we go ahead on a conditional basis subject to those matters coming through from the Auditor and then subsequently the Victorian Auditor General's Office. And I might say, in addition, that they complimented Mr. Full-Malter and his team, Mr. Mack's team, I guess I could say, and for the work they've done. So they were pleased and didn't see any issues unless something arose through the subsequent reports from VAGO. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Whelan. Councillor Holstead.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Nothing further to add. I think Councillor Whelan has covered it.
Thank you, Councillor Holstead. Would anyone else like to speak to or against the recommendation? Councillor Lark.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Whilst the documents conform to the Local Government Act 2020, accounting standards, etc., the gap for me is in leadership and performance, particularly the lack of transformation. Essentially, what are the key insights that Council will need to navigate through COVID-19 to the new normal? For example, what impact has COVID-19 had on Council's priorities and plans for transformation? What gaps or areas of opportunity did COVID-19 highlight in Council's operation? What are the top focus areas for Council transformation going forward? What challenges is Council facing in resident, ratepayer, customer and technology activities? And what are the biggest benefits that have been identified in any proposed transformation program? These are some of the strategic imperatives that Council's CEO needs to address and communicate to Council and our community, and not just tick the boxes for approving the tabled financial and performance statements. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Lark. Would anyone else like to speak to or against the recommendation? No? Yep. Councillor Bauer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's a question more than a speak. The Councillor Whelan said that subject to the provisions that the auditor was going to give. I'm curious, what were the reservations that the auditor gave the audit committee?
Are you asking that to Mr. Mack or to?
To whoever can answer.
Mr. Mayor, given I said it, I could answer that if you like.
Yep.
There weren't any. That's just allowing for the fact that if they come up with something that the Audit and Risk Committee hadn't anticipated. Councillor Bauer.
Thank you for the answer.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak to or against the recommendation as it reads? No. Councillor Whelan, would you like to summarise or put it to a vote?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I would like to just make a couple of points in answer to the points raised by Councillor Lark. I can assure you that this Audit and Risk Committee doesn't tick boxes. They drill in, and it's a very thorough analysis, and I'm very pleased to have the services of three such fine independent members of the Audit and Risk Committee. Prior to being a member of that Audit and Risk Committee, I relied on their advice, but to actually sit across the table from them, or not literally these days, but look at them on a screen, I'm heartened by the quality of the people we have reviewing this material, and I can tell you that the questions were detailed. They don't tick boxes. That's just not how they operate. And in respect to council looking as to how it should operate into the future, that's a fair enough point. But that's why we're going to have a council plan that will be adopted at the end of this year, along with a healthy living plan. All of those plans will take this into account. It's particularly pertinent that we're doing the economic development strategy this year and reviewing the visitor economy strategy, because that's the area where we showed, apart from the health and wellbeing issues that clearly a pandemic offers, is clearly what has shown the weaknesses in Bass Coast and our focus and reliance on what's basically a fairly narrow band of business. So yes, we will be taking that analysis very seriously, and that's something you need to sit down and consider over time. So I reject the criticisms made by Councillor Lark and point him towards those documents for his full and thorough input. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, we'll put to a vote. All in favour of the recommendation as it reads. Councillors Tassari, Lasserve, Holstead, Bauer, Lane, Rooks, Kent and Whelan. And against? And abstain. Councillor Lark. Carried. Item C2, the 2020-21 Major Initiatives, Finance and Capital Works. Fourth quarter to be presented by our first timer, Ms. Douthwaite.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This report provides Council and the community with an update on its 2020-21 financial year performance for our major initiatives, Capital Works program and financial results. Council has completed all of the 11 major initiatives that were included in its budget at the end of the 2020-21 financial year. Council's full year financial results reflect an operating surplus or net result of 20.7 million, which is 17.6 million better than its budgeted surplus of 3.1 million. This favourable result is due to the receipt of 16.6 million in unbudgeted developer contributions. The full year adjusted underlying surplus, which excludes developer contributions and non-recurrent grants revenue, reflects a surplus of 0.4 million, which is better than budgeted surplus of 0.2 million. Council's funding statement surplus of 458,000 is better than the budget, which reflected a neutral or balanced funding statement position. Council's balance sheet metrics remain sound, as evidenced by its strong working capital position and cash holdings. Council has expended over 20 million on the delivery of its Capital Works project portfolio, which is the highest level when compared to prior years. Notwithstanding this, Capital Works program delivery was impacted in the 2020-21 financial year by a range of factors, resulting in higher than desirable carryover figure. Officers have been undertaking a detailed review of program delivery, and this will be brought to Council as part of the 2021-22 first quarter results. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Ms. Douthwaite, and well done on your very first effort. Great job. Can I have somebody move and second the recommendations as they read, please? Councillor Whelan, and seconded. Councillor Lasserve. Councillor Whelan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I held back a minute there, but thought I'd just step up. Thanks very much to Ms. Douthwaite for her debut, and an excellent report it was. And it covers most of the issues, but I'll make a couple of highlights. One of those is the carryover of projects that have occurred, and she's indicated we'll be reviewing that process, as indeed we should and would in any circumstance. But I also highlight that we are in a sweet spot with government, and we owe them a great gratitude for that. But with the number of projects that have come online as a result of grants. In the past, I'm being very critical of government for the lack of support of local government, in particular this local government, but we are, as I said, in a sweet spot. And that does put load on our project managers, as you would expect. The other thing that we've been in is a pandemic, which has changed a lot of things and caused us to take heed, take a breath, and look at how we can best go forward with those projects. So I think overall it's again an excellent report, and I pay some tribute to Ms. Douthwaite and the team.
Thank you, Councillor Whelan. Councillor Lasserre.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I also, on behalf of the councils, would like to thank the finance team for putting the reports together and achieving a really good outcome in such difficult times. We shouldn't, looking back and looking at the COVID response and recovery package for businesses, there's been the special charge scheme for Pioneer Bay, which is well on its way to completion, and working for Victoria, that $4 million certainly gave people an opportunity to work in those early days. I think we remain within the low risk category for VAGO, which is really, that's an important issue to raise. And I think that there are a number of 60% of all those projects on the list had been completed. There are some that are currently in progress, some that have been over a number of years. So I think all in all, it reflects a really good outcome. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Lasserre. Would anyone else like to speak to or against the recommendation? Councillor Lark.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Insofar as the finances, my concerns are on record. However, to reiterate, there is insufficient underlying operating surplus. That's number one. Number two, a lack of operating budget reform to significantly improve the underlying operating surplus, to enable harvesting of savings, to significantly make more investment in capital projects from council's own resources, and finally to limit borrowings to a more sustainable level over time. There's also a flawed capital expenditure model. That is evidenced with projects amounting to $26 million not delivered in 2021 carried forward to 21-22. This model is particularly galling because council does not hold the CEO accountable for delivery of capital projects on time and within budget. This underperformance is not a one-off. It's not only because of COVID, it has occurred in each financial year under the current CEO's term. Discretionary reserves are also an issue. They are not backed by cash and or investments, not fully backed by cash and or investments, which has a tendency to lead our community to believe that council has substantial cash and investments in reserve for capital and other projects. One employee is accountable to council, that is the CEO. And in my opinion, as an expert fellow certified practicing accountant, the CEO continues to fail in addressing these matters, regardless of long-standing and arduous representations. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Lark. Would anyone else like to speak to or against this recommendation?
Mr. Mayor, if I could just say a few words. Firstly, I'd like to take a different approach in saying that I think the officers of council have been incredibly professional in their advocacy, and the fact that we have received a huge grants across the Shire for a lot of different areas is proof that they've been doing the work that's needed to be attracting these sort of funds from both the state and the federal governments, and I congratulate them for that. There may be some little tweaks that need to occur as far as the reporting is concerned, so it's a little clearer for people to understand, but I think all in all, the officers have done an incredible job to put us in such a strong position, given that we have been through a pandemic and we have had extra expenses to cover to support our community. And I'm really proud to be able to stand here today after only a year on this council. And most of that year, or all of that year, has been during a pandemic, to stand here and look at such great figures. So I congratulate the officers who have also worked under incredible conditions through COVID-19 without having that face-to-face contact either. So congratulations to them. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Holstead. Would anyone else like to speak to or against the recommendation as it reads? No? Councillor Whelan, would you like to summarise or put it to a vote?
Just briefly, Mr. Mayor, I would like to say that I echo the comments of Councillor Holstead, and thanks for making them. That's good. I mean, we take advice from experts. My experts are Ms. Douthwaite and her team, Mr. Fullmalter, obviously when he's there, and they are highly qualified accounting professionals. And beyond that, if needs be, there's the Audit and Risk Committee. Again, highly qualified people. They're the people I listen to for advice, and they're telling me, yeah, we're going okay. There's always issues. We deal with issues, but as they arise. So I just want to say I commend the report.
Thank you, Councillor Whelan. All in favour of the recommendation as it reads? Councillors Tassari, Laserve, Holstead, Bauer, Lang, Brooks, Kent and Whelan. Against? And abstain? Carried.
Mr. Mayor, could I please have a point of order?
Yep. Councillor
How
Laserve.
many times can a councillor abstain in a meeting?
There's no limit, and abstain is a vote against the motion.
There is no limit of how many times a councillor can abstain. It is technically a vote against the motion, and but there's no limit on how many.
Thank you.
Okay, so that concludes our meeting. Thank you all for coming. Thank you everybody for watching our meeting, and our next council meeting or our next council meeting is the 20th of October 2021, commencing at 1 o'clock via live stream. So I now declare this meeting closed.